Okay, I just want to make a note on the agenda. We're going to just move up the group photo prior to the closed session so that we can accommodate some schedules. So if there is a consensus on that and no issues, do I see any issues? Hi. Do I see any issues with that? No. Okay, so we have a consensus on moving that. All right, so we're going to change the agenda. Just move the group photo up before the closed session. Okay? All right, so let's move on to the roll call. Ms. Condi.
Thank you. I'll begin with the roll call of the commission. Gloria Tran, or Chair Gloria Tran. Thank you. First Vice Chair Dennis Brown. Here. Thank you. Second Vice Chair Doug Case. Here. Thank you. Commissioner Aguilar. Here. Thank you. Commissioner Armentrout is excused. Commissioner Aziz is not here. Commissioner Benitez. Thank you. Commissioner Byer. Thank you. Commissioner Canson. Okay. Commissioner Diaz. Thank you. Commissioner Flores. Commissioner Griffin-Jones. Thank you. Commissioner Harvey. It's not here. Commissioner Hilbert. Thank you. Commissioner Justice. Here. Thank you. Commissioner Molnat. Here. Thank you. And then we have Commissioner Honore and Larkin who are excused, and then Commissioner Rodriguez. Here. Thank you. And Commissioner Rubio. Here. Thank you. And then I'll also do the Ad Hoc Personnel Committee joint roll call. So we have Committee Chair Brown. Here. Thank you. Mr. Honore is again excused. Commissioner Justice. Here. Commissioner Molnat. Here. Thank you. And that concludes roll call. I still have to do one more thing. During, well, you can do that. That's okay. What is your hand? Here, where? Remove. And you can do that too. And I can have
I'm just being advised by our legal advisor that because we don't have a quorum on the ad hoc personnel committee, that meeting is not being convened. And so, but we're glad we took the roll call and we're moving forward with our regular CPP meeting. So let's look at the approval of the minutes. Does anyone have any recommended changes on the minutes?
Can you tell them all?
Move for approval of the minutes.
Is there a second? Thank you, Mr. Okay, it was Commissioner Justice moved to approve the minutes. Commissioner Byer seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? Commissioner Griffin-Jones abstains. Thank you. All right, let's move on to the updated calendar. Executive Assistant Condi, there were a couple of meetings missing in the summer, so she's going to fill us in on when those meetings are being scheduled. So, Ms. Condi?
Yes, thank you. Let me just scroll down to it so you guys can see it, but it's also in the agenda packet. So 2 dates were added. First one is July 17th. And the second is August 7th. So both of those will be held at the new office. So that's 525 B Street, and the address is there as well. The first, so either way it would be there, but 2 things. We are either going to have it in the conference room. I don't know if everybody remembers, we had our first meeting there. So there is that large conference room. And if that is unavailable, then we will use the actual office itself as a backup if needed.
Thank you. Yes, Commissioner Griffin-Jones. The office? 525 B Street, and that will be sent out on the agenda as well. Just so you're aware, the parking will be either at City Hall or for the 525 B Street, we will get you more information as we get closer, and they will be, we will be able to pay for the parking for you, so we should be good. Okay, is there any public comment about the calendar? Ms. Obie?
I have not received any in-person public comment about the calendar. And we have one attendee virtually. If you would like to speak on the calendar, please raise your hand now. This concludes public comment on this item. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Obie. Is there any other discussion on the calendar? Can I have a motion to accept the new updated calendar? Commissioner Rodriguez? Okay. She moves to accept the updated calendar. Commissioner Malmat seconds. Any other discussion? Okay, approved. And so that new calendar will be sent out to the commission. Thank you so much. All right, now we have, oh, you know what? I would like to welcome our new commissioner, Mr. Steve Chatsky. He comes to us, he's now on our commission. He's been approved, took the oath of office, and so we welcome him. And if we have time later on, we will, yeah, let's give him a round of applause. Thank you. Do we have any public, non-agenda public comment? Ms. Obie?
Yes, we have two in-person non-agenda public comment. The first person is Kate Evanzetti. You have 1 minute.
Hello again. I actually have two things, but I'll be fast. One is on the minutes. I was dismayed to see that while it noted that there was public comment, it didn't say what the substance of the comment was, which has been in prior minutes. And I would ask that that be put back in the minutes, because I think that's important, because, you know, I comment and other people do, and I think it's important to hear what the public comment is. The second is the one that I raised last time, and I'm going to raise it again, about the executive director position. I would hope that that would be agendized for the next meeting so we could have a report back on what's going on. Applications are closed. I also want to know, again, who was on the community panel and how it was chosen, and that's not a secret. So I think that's important, and if I still have a few seconds left, I will comment on the new calendar, and that is, I had commented on this way before when you used Procopio, that it is not accessible for those of us who can't walk more than a block.
Thank you. Ms. Francine Maxwell. You have 1 minute.
Thank you. Francine Maxwell, Southeastern San Diego resident. I'm concerned with the lack of community outreach. We have Zoom, we have meetings in person, but there needs to be community engagement. Pick a district and have a meeting so that the community can get back engaged, back recharged about the CPP that we fought for, everything. I'm also concerned with the chief investigator person that is reviewing cases. You have it as a mid to level, but she needs to be doing our policies and procedures so that when we're ready to have our investigator, that we can pull the trigger now. All commissioners should be seeing all complaints. I think that it's a disingenuous that we push to have this and we have somebody that's screening. And we had someone that came to the meeting about the executive director, and he's doing a federal lawsuit because he received a letter and you guys had not even seen it. Our interim executive director hadn't even seen that complaint. So I will continue to hone that in until you tell us why you have our chief investigator screening.
Thank you. This concludes in-person public comment. If you are joining us virtually and would like to speak on non-agenda public comment, please raise your hand now. This concludes public comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Obie, and thank you to members of the community. Now we're going to have an update on the pursuit policy, and as stated at the last meeting, we're going to bring it up at every meeting. But we are lucky today to have Internal Affairs Captain Jeffrey Peterson to join us to update on what's been happening from their end with the pursuit policy, and just to fill us in on what's going on. Captain Peterson. Oh, one more thing. You were just passed out today this San Diego Police Department order. Everyone has a copy. Captain Peterson is going to be referring to it, so you have it in front of you, okay?
Thank you for having me. Captain Jeffrey Peterson, San Diego PD Internal Affairs. So I was asked to come speak about the recent pursuit training, which is an annual training. If you look at the department order that I think Ms. Tran passed out, you'll see reference to a training application called Success Factors. So I think in order to explain best, let's start there. So Success Factors is an online training application that's provided by the city. It tracks all online training completed by employees of the police department. It allows supervisors to audit the training and audit time requirements for employees to complete training. And this Success Factors is a source for much of our online training or much of our training period, especially mandated yearly trainings, EEO, pursuit training, cybersecurity. So it includes both state mandated training and city mandated training. So that's what Success Factors is. Going specifically to the pursuit training, this is an annual training, and just reading from the top of the order, on October 4th of 2005, Senate Bill 719 was signed into law. This law, which went into effect January 1st of 2006, requires law enforcement agencies to establish pursuit policies, continually provide annual pursuit training to their officers, and ensure all pursuits are documented and submitted to the California Highway Patrol within 30 days. And down in the next paragraph, specifically about this, San Diego PD Procedure 1.03, Pursuit Procedures, and California Vehicle Code Sections 17,004.7B1 and 17,004.7B2 mandates annual vehicle pursuit training for all sworn employees and requires all sworn employees to certify in writing that they have received, read, and understood the department's vehicle pursuit policies and are required to complete the SB 719 Pursuit Policy Training Attestation Form. So here are kind of the highlights of the training. Not only do the officers have to complete the online training in Success Factors, on the back of the order, hopefully you got the full one, is the attestation form that must be signed, completed and signed by the officer, and also signed off by their supervisor. And a hard copy of that original is then maintained in their training file. So the training itself is split into 3 sections. The first is a link to Department Procedure 1.03. So it's a direct link to the procedure. The officers have to scan through that procedure and then click a button that says they attest to have read the entire procedure. The second part is a link to the yearly CHP report to the state legislature covering statewide pursuit data, and that data includes both apprehension and crash data, and that is a public document. I did bring one copy of it for you if you want it, but there is a link online, and CHP is required to provide that every year to the state legislature. So there's probably.
Can you please send Danelle the link and she can send it to the commission?
I will, as soon as I walk out today, I'll send that over. So that's the first 2 parts. Again, the link to that, the officer must go there and then attest to have seen and observed the information in that data. And then the third part is then we get into the actual visual and auditory training that goes on. And it's broken down into 3 training parts and 5 quizzes that all must be passed. And the learning sections cover 34 minutes. They include video, dispatch audio, and voiceovers highlighting the main portions of our pursuit policy. And those, when I went back and looked through it, it really talks about the legal standards of pursuits, expectations of both officers and supervisors, interactions with communications or dispatch, and then use of ABLE. That's really the primary overriding parts of the 3 sections. The 5 quizzes have 59 total questions, Each section must be passed with a score of 100% before the employee can move on to the next part of the training. Broken down even further, learning portion 1 has 2 quizzes, learning portion 2 has 2 quizzes, learning portion 3 has a singular quiz before the employee is allowed to complete. Total time to complete the training is approximately 1 hour, and every sworn member of the department is required to complete the training. So that is a very broad overview of the training. We get this every year, usually right around the March-April timeframe.
Thank you. Before you leave, I would like to see if there's any public comment, and then we'll have some discussion and questions, hopefully from the commission, if that's okay, Captain? Okay. So do we have any public comment, Ms. Obi?
Yes, we have one in-person public comment, Ms. Francine.
Francine Maxwell, Southeastern San Diego. Thank you so much for the presentation, but this was meaningless. And this is what I'm talking about as the CPP. As we begin to engage with the community and build trust, this builds nothing. We know that San Diego PD is the finest train engine. What there should have been a presentation on today was the data of how many officers are reprimanded for this pursuit, how many are called off. We have a lot of chases that are called off. That would have been a game changer today, somebody bringing me data. And so again, I understand that there's an ad hoc committee. Ladies and gentlemen, we don't have time to waste. We are building trust and we are building credibility. And right now, our city is at a standstill on credibility, especially with the new police chief search. So this is our lifeline is CPP to help us build that credibility back and build some trust within SDPD. Thank you.
Thank you. If you are joining us virtually and would like to speak, I see Mr. Yusuf. I'm going to go ahead and allow you to speak. You have 1 minute.
Hello, my name is Yusuf Miller of North County Equity and Justice Coalition, Saving Lives in Custody campaign. And I agree. I expected a lot more from this presentation, and to the tone of what constitutes a chase, what constitutes breaking off a chase, some of the data that's related to the offenses that chases are normally built on, and how far and what extent would they go, what weather conditions would change the intent to pursue, and community or speeds. All of these kind of things, which actually impact the community, because this is where we're seeing people harmed and killed and things of this nature all over the nation, where we see pursuits that are unworthy for a citation. So I don't know what to take from this, except to say that again, SDPD is trained. That's about all I could get from this. But I would like to see more data in those areas. Thank you.
Thank you. This concludes public comment on this item.
Thank you. Captain Peterson, can we ask some questions here then as a commission? Actually, I really would like to hear what a couple of our community members said. How is a decision made when to call off a chase? How quickly can ABLE be up in the air if it's not already? And is that even a possibility if it's not up? So can you kind of give some of that, and then we'll have questions from our commissioners?
I'll take the second one first. So if ABLE is not up, you're probably looking, depending on which part of the city, 20 minutes to 30 minutes before they're able to do their pre-flight check and get in the air. Most of our pursuits don't generally last that long, so I would say, honestly, if they're not in the air, it's probably going to be unavailable, but not always. The first question, when are pursuits called off? There is a myriad of reasons why and how that's evaluated. Certainly traffic, the seriousness of the crime, the number of suspects involved, whether the suspect is known, and there's probably a half a dozen more. All of those are given consideration by the field lieutenant, the watch commander, and the field supervisor who are monitoring each pursuit to decide when and if to call off a pursuit.
Can an officer themselves call off a pursuit if they think it's too dangerous, or do they have to be given a green light by superior?
No, the officer involved in the pursuit can call it off.
Any questions from the commission? Commissioner Justice.
Thank you for being here, Captain. Do the officers get any specialized training for high-speed driving techniques and controlling the vehicles? I think the Highway Patrol does something like that. I think they have like a test track. Does San Diego PD have something like that?
We don't have what CHP has a very different setup at their academy and their training locations. They have test tracks that allow them to drive at much higher speeds because generally their enforcement is occurring on the freeway at higher speeds. Most of ours are going to be on city streets at slightly lower speeds, but officers get training both in the academy and then fairly repetitively every 2 years at what we call advanced officer training, or AOT. Sergeants and below are mandated to attend that every 2 years. It's post-mandated training, and post sets the curriculum, but EBOC or driving is generally a part of that training every 2 years. So they get updates relatively frequently. But we do not have currently the type of track that CHP is running.
Commissioner Griffin Jones.
It's right behind you.
Hello? Hello, okay, cool. I wanted to ask, what is the course of action if an officer does not fill out this form within the required 30 days of an incident?
The CHP form, end of it.
Sorry, it has to be off.
Are you talking about the one they sent to post?
Yes.
This form is for the training.
So I can answer. So that training form, the attestation form, as soon as the deadline ended on March 22nd, then we track missing forms, we track incomplete training, and then we go back to those officers to make sure we get it. There's no reason for us to not have 100% compliance every year, but because there's a physical document that needs to make its way from the officer to their supervisor to training, we do allow a certain amount of time after that for that movement to occur. And right now with spring break and everything else going on, we've got lots of officers on vacation and other things. So by mid-April, I expect that we're going to be at 100% compliance.
And this form is new, but this is a new form connected to a policy that was ratified in 2005.
I'm sorry, that form has been attached to, that attestation form has been in existence, maybe slightly changed, for as long as I can remember, more than probably 10, 12 years. I don't think it's changed. I've signed dozens of them. So, and then going back a question, I think you were also referring to the CHP forms that have to be completed after a pursuit. So that is the responsibility of the commanding officer. So once the officer and sergeant complete that form, it's up to the commanding officer to make sure that's signed off and sent off to our traffic division, who then handles the routing to CHP.
Okay, sorry. So this form has been in existence since 2012, even though this measure was ratified in 2005.
I think it went in effect in 2006. I'm just saying, I remember signing it going back as far as I can physically remember. So as far as I know, that attestation form or some form of it has been in existence the first year we did the training, which would have been 2006.
And then the procedure for when a pursuit happens. So a pursuit happens, and then the officer is responsible for getting this attestation form. Okay, walk me through.
More specific, that attestation form only applies to the annual training. It's not used for anything else that we do. So that hard copy, once it's signed, goes into their training file. That's the last it's used for that year. We have separate forms, a CHP 187A form that CHP requires and the state requires us to fill out at the completion of a pursuit. But that is a different form.
And so, okay, so that's a different form. And then, so you mentioned earlier that there are some missing forms from last year?
Once the officers have completed we're not missing any forms. We have officers who probably completed the training and their form is en route by snail mail, essentially, or inter-office mail from their division up to training. Training gets them in bulks of hundreds. Each one has to be gone through to make sure it's been filled out properly, it's been signed by the employee, signed by the supervisor, which tends to be the holdup problem. And a lot of those then have to go routed back to the supervisor to be signed and forwarded up. So we're not missing any, we just don't have them all yet. And that's part of training's job, is to then follow up to make sure we have all of them. So each single one has to be accounted for every employee.
Officer Peterson, when you don't have something, like it's missing, like keys.
Commissioner Griffin-Jones, I'm going to give the other commissioners a chance to ask questions, and then we can come back to you, if that's
Appreciate
okay.
you. That sounds good.
Anyone else have any questions? Ooh, okay, Commissioner Benitez I saw first, then Aguilar, then Chapsky. So, and then Hart. So Commissioner Benitez.
Hi, thanks for being here. Two quick questions. The data that you were talking about, that's the B719 report on police pursuits in the Senate Bill I think it's SB 719. Is that the report that you had a copy of?
Yes.
That every year
every year
has to be
yeah.
reviewed? Okay, I just want to make sure. And could you, and this is a stupid question, I'll define it as stupid. When does a pullover turn into a pursuit? And in terms of like reporting back and documentation, can you define pursuit in terms of what is the dividing line such that it needs to be sort of documented or viewed as such?
That is really a very good question. So when you said that's actually a good question. And there's a lot of debate internally as well when we have situations where maybe somebody is visiting here from another country, and maybe there's a misunderstanding of what the lights on the police car actually mean, and we'll get involved in what we think might be a slow speed pursuit, and we pull the person over and come to find out they just didn't understand what the rules were. And so even if we audibilized over the radio that was a pursuit, we then break that down and make a really educated decision as to whether or not this was an evading type situation or somebody just didn't get it. And if that's the case, we would not classify that as a pursuit. And then supervisors should be putting notes on the incident to let them know that they evaluated this and it's not a pursuit. So we really depend on field supervisors to make that decision, and an educated decision based on all of the information. I think there's the obvious ones, and then there's situations where some people just don't understand what they're supposed to do. There's also situations where we have very young drivers who honestly brain lock in the moment and get nervous. And it's not that they're driving erratically, they just don't know what to do. And they panic in that moment, and maybe they just continue on the road, down the road for another mile, and then pull over, and a quick discussion with them will get us to the point where it's clear this wasn't a pursuit and therefore not reportable.
Thank you. Commissioner Aguilar?
Thank you for taking my question. What I want to know is what records does the San Diego Police Department keep on pursuits? I mean, do they keep statistics on how many pursuits there were in a certain year? What happened, the result of those pursuits, records like that?
So we provide all of our pursuit data to CHP, and they keep a more broad-based statewide look. We have documentation on each of the pursuits because we obviously keep a copy of that CHP 187A form. So we have that data. We don't necessarily look at, I don't know how traffic breaks that down, whether they format statistics that are then provided to the chief of police. I'm not sure. I know CPP has requested a lot of data going back 5 years, which we're going to be happy to provide. And so maybe that will give you a better idea of what we keep. I have not worked traffic before, so it would be difficult for me to guess beyond the 187A form what they have in relationship to pursuit data.
Thank you, Commissioner Chatsky.
Thank you for your presentation. I'm wondering if you have any data on the percent of pursuits that involve canines, and if so, what percent involve subsequent bites, and what percent of those involve subsequent hospitalization?
I'm sure that the data exists in a raw form. It would probably be kept by either traffic or canine. Obviously, canine keeps their own bite data, but I don't know what form that is and how it would be presented. I don't believe that's one of the things that you have requested to date, but I'm sure that canine keeps its own set of bite data. Whether they relate that to pursuits or just in more general annual statistics of that, I'm not sure.
Does communications keep computerized logs on when canine is involved in them?
So when a canine officer gets attached to any incident, I'm assuming there's a methodology for them to go back and search event history that has a canine, but I'm not sure how that's done. That's definitely outside my scope. Communications supervisors would have a much better view of how that's done and how that computer system functions. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Harvey, then Commissioner Flores, and then Commissioner Rodriguez.
All right, two things. One, I guess he said that, and this may be going to the commission and to our executive board members. He spoke of the updates, of the data that we have requested. I'd like to get an update from us as far as.
That's going to be part of the ad hoc committee report and what we requested, and so that's coming up right after this agenda item.
Great.
So thank you.
All right. Another thing is the training that you have in success factors, and again, this could be to the commission or to Mrs. R. Do we have access to that?
We have requested that as part of our data information.
Okay.
So that is part of, and again, Commissioner, second Vice Chair Case is the chair of that ad hoc committee, so he will update us. Thank you, Commissioner Harvey. Commissioner Flores?
So I have two questions. One was about the type of training you do, but it's more related to the conventions that come to town for police education. Is there a way to quantify how many police officers go to those conventions and learn unconventional methods of police tactics?
Are you referring more to the IACP that just came?
Yes.
There's a lot, they have a lot of classes. It tends to be more the IACP tends to be more leadership based versus presentations for necessarily line level officers. I don't want to say that there aren't any, but you got to remember, nationwide, and IACP is obviously international. many states and certainly many jurisdictions have far different policies or procedures than we do. We don't have really any intervention techniques that a lot of other states allow, pit maneuvers, all kinds of other contraption-related intervention techniques. So a lot of those classes wouldn't apply to us. And I'm not aware at the most recent IACP if there were any classes that dealt with pursuit style. I know that there was probably vendors there that were selling items or intervention technique items, but we don't have any of those, except for obviously spike strips. But that's about as basic of an intervention technique as there is.
And my second question was around innovation in the police department when it comes to police pursuits. Like I saw a recent article about darts from, when a police pursuit starts in a part of New York, they shoot a dart from their vehicle to track that pursuit. Is that, like when you hear an idea like that, does the police department pull that idea and discuss it and come up with solutions on where to create that?
So I know our chief gets inundated with information and requests from companies to field test things like a dart. But one of our concerns always and has to be the legalities of using those particular things. And the dart has been around for quite a bit of time. And I don't want to say we question, but we have concerns about the Fourth Amendment nature of using a dart to take over someone's car and stop it. Now, I'm not a legal expert, but that is a consideration if you're going to spend millions of dollars on an intervention technique and only to find it may not be legally appropriate in the state of California to use such an item.
And just to follow up on that, so that's like one idea, but if there are innovations that arise to support safety within the police pursuits and how they're conducted currently, are those ideas that then go to the police chief and that goes down to the departments from there?
That's exactly how it happens. Usually the information will come in one of a couple of ways. The chief will run into someone at a particular event. They'll provide him information. It'll be interesting to him. He will come back. He'll meet with his group, and then eventually, if it's something that they want to pursue or look at deeper, they'll eventually go to the training unit. Or, so for example, the DART, that would probably go off to the training unit, the EVOC Corps instructor, in combination with traffic, to look at that and see if that's something we should consider field testing. But before we even get to that part, there's a lot of research that goes into the effectiveness, how much you're going to spend, are there any legal ramifications for using it, are there any issues that have resulted in large lawsuits because of the manner in which it was used, and is it controllable once we get it? Meaning, what kind of policies and procedures are going to have to be in place to control the use of that particular item? So even before we consider spending $1, we have several months of going through particular steps to make sure we're on good ground. Because generally speaking, once you get into the field training or field testing part, first you're testing in a controlled environment. And then once the chief gives his authority, then we take it out and test it in a controlled environment out on the streets with limited personnel. But once you expose it to the streets, you're now exposing it to all the legal and lawsuit-related effects of using that particular thing. It's a months-long process. Doesn't mean we don't consider it, just means it goes through a many-layered review before it's something that you would even hear about. We've turned down and field tested hundreds of items that turned out just didn't meet our expectations.
To ask for those reports to be able to determine what ideas had been considered and if they were viable and why not? Is that something that's possible?
I don't know what we would have in training that we would keep. It's more, I don't know. I'd really have to, you'd almost have to be very specific about what type of items you were inquiring about and whether we did have any actual documentation. I know the wrap was something that came up maybe 7 or 8 years ago. Somebody came up with, not the idea, but heard about this thing that was being used in other jurisdictions. And we explored that, tested it, and it worked for us. But I can't tell you how many other things we've turned down, but I don't know that we've documented why. It's just been more, please test this and then tell us why it did or it did not work. So, but again, if you gave me something specific, it's certainly something I could research.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Rodriguez.
Hi. Well, my question is more in regards to the training itself. SB 719 is for annual pursuit training, and I see here that it says like the steps of the training, the quizzes you have to take, and then at the end signing the attestation form. However, I looked at the California Code of Regulations on what entails of vehicle pursuit training annually, and it's a myriad of subject, about maybe like 15 plus, that I don't think would be covered. It's an opinion, but I don't think it would be covered in an hour and a half of training. So it kind of got me questioning on what is the initial training like? How many hours is it? Is it more on hand? Are there simulators? Because this is just in regards to recurring training, correct? Okay, so that's part one. Part two is back to what Commissioner Griffin Jones was mentioning. I see that this is an order from the SCPD, which came out March 5th, 2024. And it mentions here the training shall be completed by March 22nd, 2024. So is this annual training something that has recently been put in effect in SCPD in year 2024, although this bill was approved in 2006?
No, it's been going on since 2006.
So if that's the case, why would the training shall be completed by March 22nd when each officer should have their own training date, which correlates when they entered the force?
Can you turn off your mic?
I'm sorry, the training is based annually, so we can complete it anytime between January 1st and December 31st. We set the framework for that training, and any officer can complete it anytime during that 2 weeks or whatever was given. They just have to be available at a computer. So hundreds of people can be taking the training all at the same time at locations all over the city. They just have to have access to a city-related computer.
Okay, in that sense, why is it ongoing?
So we have to, I'm sorry, I always don't pause, that's my fault. So we have to issue an order, because if they don't complete the training, then there's potential for discipline. So there has to be an order that tells the officer or employee what they must do and gives them a date that they must complete it by. And if we're going to hold somebody accountable for that, there has to be that document that's the department order. So order, date that they must complete it by, supervisory oversight, and then should it not be completed in a timely manner or without a reason for not completing it by March 22nd, potential for discipline.
Got it. So again, so it's an order in 2024. That's what I'm trying to, this should have been in existence. So why is it new? Like, was there an update? Is this something that now you guys are going to be tracking? Why in 2024 is this being implemented?
So the matching order in 2023, 2022, 2021, 2020, it should all be online, so you can go to the city website. You will see an order every year, roughly around this time, that mentions this specific training. So even though, yes, I get what you're saying, even though the training is ongoing,
None of this is
Every
being
year
on.
that we cross
None of
into,
that is on there.
we'll get a order that says, we'll get an order that says you must complete EEO training by this day. You must complete cybersecurity training by this day. You must complete, pursuit training by this day. And you will get that every calendar year as long as you're an employee with the San Diego Police Department.
Thank you for the clarification. That does answer my question. So the last one is just initial training.
Sure. So I don't know how many hours. That's certainly something I can provide. I'll ask, but I would say estimated, they're probably getting 50 hours of driver training in the police academy, and that encompasses pursuit training. That encompasses just regular city driving, because we have to not only teach them how to drive really fast, we have to teach them how to drive really slow in police cars. If you've ever been inside of a police car and sat in the front seat, especially these new SUVs, they have blind spots everywhere. And unfortunately, that means we crash a bunch of these things. So we want to cover both the slow speed and then build them up into higher speed driving, and then higher speed driving where they're trying to keep up with a target, meanwhile taking into account street signs, speed limit signs, where they are, being able to then talk on the radio at the same time. So it's a process that builds over multiple weeks, adding in little extra pieces each time so that they understand in the framework of driving fast, there's a lot of things going on inside that car besides them and driving. This is going off. They might have a partner who's now talking to them. That environment becomes very overwhelming very quickly. And so the process of working through the academy is to build them up to understand all those things and then take into account their own abilities and understanding what their limitations are as a driver, because everybody in this room has different limitations about not only what they're comfortable with, but what they're capable of doing.
All right, we're going to have to wrap up this discussion, and we'll wrap it up with Commissioner Griffin-Jones' last question. Thank you.
Thank you for your questions, Commissioner Rodriguez. You helped give me a lot of clarity for mine. I wanted to ask, how will the officers who missed the March 22nd deadline, how will they be held accountable?
Sure. So training is currently, and we'll go back and audit until we have 100% compliance. Now, there may be situations where we can't be 100% compliant, meaning we have officers on military leave, we have officers on industrial leave. They are simply unavailable to come in and do the training. So I don't want to say it's 100% of availability. So they are doing that now daily as they get these attestation forms in. And then eventually what will happen is a report will go from the training captain out to all of the commanding officers that says, these are the officers that we still do not have compliance from. So please explain why we don't have compliance, and then decide whether or not this is compliance that needs to be, or lack of compliance that needs to be adjudged with some form of discipline, or whether there's a reasonable explanation as to why it was not completed by March 22nd, 2024.
And that's some form of discipline. What would that be?
It could be anything. It could be verbal counseling. It could be anything up to, really anything is on the table. It just depends on prior discipline. There's a lot of factors that go into account.
For sure. And my question also is, are there data on intoxicated officers during pursuits?
I missed the first part.
Intoxicated officers, is there data on pursuits being done by intoxicated officers, keeping in mind that there was a news article that was released about intoxicated officers of SDPD doing pursuits?
I'm not aware of any instances, but I mean, I'm only limited to the knowledge I have. If there was an intoxicated officer in the course of a pursuit or found to be intoxicated after the pursuit, then that would go to my other unit, the professional standards unit. who would be called out to deal with that if that was a situation that alerted itself to at the completion of a pursuit.
We have to wrap this
And the
up.
miles per hour that are allowed, is there like a miles per hour? Because the neighborhood of City Heights I live in, there are constantly, now 1 minute, you know, an officer is just driving, minute later, 100 miles per hour, like 100 or whatever miles per hour through a busy intersection like University and Fairmont. So wanting to ask if there's like a miles per hour police officer shouldn't be going above, or in really busy places.
There's not a specific miles per hour listed in any policy or procedure that we use the reasonableness standard. So obviously that's up for interpretation, but we do not have a miles per hour listed in any policy that I'm aware of that covers pursuits or just even regular driving.
Okay, thank you. We need to wrap it up,
Attestation
Commissioner.
forms are
Commissioner,
missing from 2023.
is this your last question?
I would like.
I know,
two
but we
more
need to
questions.
we need to wrap up the discussion. How about one more question?
Okay.
Quickly, please.
Okay. How many missing attestation forms are there from 2023?
I have no idea. I can find out, but I would guess none. So that's just my guess.
Confident.
Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you, Captain Jeff Peterson, excuse me. And so we are going to move on to the Police Pursuit Ad Hoc Committee with Ad Hoc Committee Chair Case to update us on what they've done. Before we do we have any public comment on this, Ms. Obie?
We have no public comment on this in person. If you're joining us virtually and would like to speak on the Ad Hoc Committee, Police Pursuit Ad Hoc Committee, please raise your hand now. We have no virtual public comment. This completes public comment on this item. Thank you.
Thank you. Chair Case, will you update us on what the Ad Hoc Committee's been doing?
Okay, we had our first meeting yesterday, and the members of the committee are Commissioner Hilpert, Commissioner Rodriguez, Commissioner Diaz, and Commissioner Flores. As was already mentioned, we have made a request of the department for three things. Number one is I forget the exact name of the form, but it's the form that each officer is required to fill out after a pursuit. And that form is then sent to the CHP. Secondly, there is an evaluation that is done by a supervisor, and I believe that person is in the traffic division of each of the pursuits. And so we've asked for copies of the evaluations of all the pursuits. And then thirdly, we've asked for copies of all of the training materials that the department utilizes. So that is what is in our request to the department. We met with the chief yesterday, the cabinet, for a regular bi-monthly meeting, and he indicated that this information is not something that is easily obtainable by electronically, and so it may take a while to gather all the forms. We requested them for a 5-year period beginning in 2019. So he indicated he may not be able to get that to us by the 10-day timeline that is specified. We hope to get that to fairly expeditiously. At yesterday's meeting, we came up with 4 tasks for the committee and assigned people to those tasks. The first one is training, which we've been talking about, and Commissioner Rodriguez agreed to do that, and she's going to be looking into what the precise training is of the department, and then comparing that to some of the requirements of post, as well as the best practices. Commissioner Hilpert has agreed to do what we're referring to as a best practices comparison. As you may have read about in the San Diego Union Tribune article, there was a national report that was put together by PERF, which stands for Police Executive Research Foundation Forum. Thank you, Forum. And the U.S. Department of Justice COPS, which stands for Community Oriented Policing, and the S stands for, anyway, I forget what the S stands for, but it's They did a joint report, and that report had, I think, 65 recommendations. Not all of them are policy related, but most of them are. And so Commissioner Hilpert agreed to go through that report and compare the SDPD policy and practices to the items that are mentioned in that report. The third item is comparing the SDPD policy to other departments similar size in the state of California and in other places of the country. And Commissioner Flores has agreed to do that. And we're going to be looking at specific things. And we haven't identified what all those are yet, but it may include things of under what types of infractions or when can they start a pursuit. And that's a big controversial issue, and there's a lot of other things that we'll be looking at. So we'll be comparing our department with other departments, both within the state and outside of the state. And then finally, we want to analyze the data that's available. And so once we get the report from the department, Commissioner Diaz has agreed to compile all that. And it may be a challenging task because it may come in hard copies. But she is going to look through that, and also we understand that much of that information is available in aggregate basis from the CHP because they put it into a statistical format, and so we also will be trying to gather the information that's available from the CHP for the city of San Diego as well as for the state as a whole. And actually, we put in our committee's folder today the report that he was talking about, which is the CHP report from the last fiscal year, so you can find it there. Anyway, and so we're going to meet every other week to give an update on these 4 tasks, and we'll be meeting prior to each CPP meeting, so we'll come back at our next meeting with an update of how much we've been able to make progress on. So thank you.
Discussion or questions? Okay, so we had an action item that we tabled from last meeting on the reiteration policy where they send out the policy again to all department personnel. We tabled it due to it not being agendized per advice from council. However, since this was just sent out and all personnel had to do it, and already, what a reiteration policy is when they send it out, they focus on it, they say, read this policy again, and we want to be sure you're aware of the policy because there have been a lot of incidents. To me, and this is going to be open to discussion, I believe it would be a waste of time because they already did that just recently. So I would like to move that we don't do that because, again, it's just been done. Is there a second to that? Okay, Commissioner Byer seconded. Any discussion? Okay, so the vote is on not sending out a recommendation of a reiteration policy to the PD since it was just done. All those in favor? Opposed? Okay, one opposition from Commissioner Griffin Jones. And abstentions? Commissioner Chatsky. Thank you. All right, so moving on to the next item. Again, this was not agendized either, which is why I, now that we have our outside counsel actually with us and not virtual, there was a letter to send to the CEO and the mayor to express disappointment about the PD not showing up to the community hearing, and also hoping that they do better next time. So we are going to re-vote on this, reconsider it. I would like to weigh in on this, saying there's going to be a new administration very shortly. The new chief starts on June 7th. To me, I'd like us to build our own relationship and not go top-down, heavy-handed when it's not necessary. So my vote would be, or my suggestion would be, we not do this at this point and hold this option for when it may be necessary, if it's necessary, with the new administration. That is my suggestion. Any public comment on this letter?
Yes, we have one in-person public comment, Ms. Francine.
Francine Maxwell, the issue was to set the tone with our COO, who the chief of police reports to. So many people in this room already have a relationship with the incoming chief. This was directed towards the COO to let the COO know that the community expectation is that when there's hearings, we're not buying as a community that a police officer should not be in the room, cannot be in the room. Everyone knows that they cannot answer anything with pending litigation. So this was to set the tone. Again, no problem with it being retracted today, but I wanted to make sure that the record reflected that this was a set the tone, not wait and be reactive. It was to be proactive.
This concludes in-person public comment. If you're joining us virtually and would like to speak on this item, please raise your hand now. Mr. Youssef, you have 1 minute. I'll go ahead and unmute you.
Sorry, 1 second. I just need the microphone.
One moment.
Yes, it's Yusuf Miller, North County.
1 moment. Go ahead.
Yusuf, you. Go ahead.
Hello? Can you hear us?
Hello? Yes, I can hear.
You can speak now.
Now, okay. This is Yusuf Miller, Saving Lives in Custody campaign. And I agree. I think that there should be a tone set and expectation of the new chief when it comes in, not to be adversarial, but I don't think that there's any harm in meeting with the chief and setting up these expectations as part of getting to know who we're serving with and who we're serving under, or the vice versa. So I would think to like sort of recategorize how we're looking at this as more of a friendly and in environmental look at the type of environment that we want to live in with this new chief. So thank you.
Thank you. This concludes public comment on this item.
Thank you. Any discussion from the commissioners? Okay, then I'll make a motion because I am not for this at this point. Oh, yes, Commissioner Flores.
But I agree with the public comment because setting the tone is important. It's like you're a teacher coming into a new semester. You want to be able to set a tone for how the semester is going to go with your students. It's the same thing with looking at a new administration. If we're going to be able to set a tone with them, maybe we have to rewrite the letter to not be so critical because they're coming into it, but to just set a clear example that this is a world we want to live in. This is how they should perform their duty. I think that's a reasonable ask.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Benitez.
You know how I hate to disagree with you, but in light of the continuing service of the COO and that the new police chief is coming from within the San Diego Police Department, I don't know that it makes a difference to wait to, send this letter about expectations with regard to making sure that you have a presence at these public meetings and the importance of that vis-a-vis community relations, because this is way bigger than the commission itself, right? This is about the relationship between the San Diego Police Department and the communities that the department serves. So I just want to say that because I don't know that it makes any difference in terms of getting off on the right foot with a new chief or anything, because whether it's on the desk the day he starts or he gets it 30 days later, it is what it is. And it has to do with, if I'm understanding you correctly, it has to do with the expectations that we have about how the department shows up around these community issues.
Thank you. Does someone want to make a motion for or against? We're open. This isn't a discussion, so. Okay. What-
Good evening, Commissioners. You need to vote one way or another. Okay, so the vote last week was actually non-proton. It was not on the agenda, so it was an invalid action. So if you choose to send a letter, then your vote, then an alternate motion will be in order to send the vote, or excuse me, to send the letter. If you want to reconsider it, you can reconsider it, but you all need to do one or the other. So the status quo won't work for you, okay?
Commissioner Griffin Jones.
Can I make, so I'm sorry, Council Bennett, can I make a motion to send the letter? Okay, I would like to make a motion to send the letter.
All right, second.
I second that.
Commissioner Flores. Thank you.
Clarifications what the letter itself says, because the motion last time was actually two parts. Number one was expressing disappointment that nobody was, the department did not send anybody to the community hearing. And the second part was to send a letter to the COO talking about expectations of department involvement in the affairs of the commission, and especially community hearings. I personally would if we can keep it positive and expectations, I think that would be more appropriate. So maybe the Commissioner Griffin Jones can be more specific as to what the letter would say.
Yes, to clarify, my motion is to send both letters expressing disappointment and expectation. Okay, well, in the one letter, I'd like in that letter, the disappointment to be expressed and expectation.
Is everyone, is there a consensus to amend that motion? Yes? Okay. Did you second, you want to second it again, Commissioner Flores? You don't have to. Okay, Commissioner Rodriguez seconds. I see his hesitation. I agree with Second Vice Chair Case that if we kept it positive, I can get behind that. I am not looking towards going backwards because, as I said, that administration is gone. So that, to me, is a step backwards. I'm just one voice. So is that what you were going to say, Commissioner Flores?
Yeah, I think we should separate the letters. I think that setting the tone should be a positive kind of letter within the scope of like what we want from our police chief and what we want from our department. And then to add to your point, Commissioner Tran, sending a second letter, maybe 30 days, maybe 60 days after, when they understand our expectations, have they met our expectations yet? We can determine that at that point and edit that letter and be able to add it then.
Okay, we have Commissioner Malma, Harvey, Rubio, and Hilbert, and we got to keep it short, you guys, because we're running tight on time.
I was just going to suggest, I think because there's a little bit of division, maybe what we do is this one letter, but we have two motions for the two different topics, because I think some people might want to vote for one versus the other. Like I know for me personally, I would vote kind of what you guys were saying is to keep it positive. So I would vote yes on the second, but I would vote no on the first. So it might be easier to try to help move it along to do two motions.
Good idea. Well, we have Commissioner Rubio first, and I see you, Commissioner Griffin Jones, and then Harvey, and then back to Commissioner Griffin Jones.
Does this letter exist yet, or are we going to write it?
No, nothing has been written due to an invalid vote taken at last time.
Okay.
So that's why we want the content. That's why we're stressing on what the content.
Yeah.
And also, if we vote to write a letter, it will come back to this commission for review at the next meeting, and then we'd send it. So that would be the order.
I'd just like to ask if we can have this letter read aloud before we do vote to approve it and to send it out. But like explicitly, like read it, like that it's, I mean, if it's like 10 pages, you know, maybe a summary, but if it's like one page and we can read it so that it's on the record and it's like we are like revising and able to critically analyze this document before sending it out, I think that would be a helpful tool. to make an informed decision, but
That's the process. Yes, you're right.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay,
Just wanted
thank
to
you.
make sure.
Commissioner Harvey?
Yeah, I just like to say that you have to understand that expressing our disappointment isn't necessarily a negative thing. You know, we are just letting them know, and the fact that as Commissioner Benitez was stating, it's going to an individual that is already in the police force, an individual that I'm quite sure, because I haven't seen the next chief as being much different from the previous chief. So, I mean, it's not a negative thing because we're stating it just ain't got to be the whole letter that we were disappointed in the fact that the individual didn't show up and that this is our expectations. And in the future, we just like to work with you. I mean, there's a way of writing this thing without it being negative, but expressing our disappointment.
Thank you, Commissioner Harvey. Commissioner Griffin Jones, and again, we need to move on a vote. There is a motion on the floor.
Just wanted to plus one what Commissioner Harvey said. Accountability is never negative. It can feel uncomfortable, but under uncomfortable circumstances is when we grow the most. So just wanting to like lift that up. And I think that it's really important that we flex our power. Behind us, we have the voters of San Diego who made a historical decision to create this. We wouldn't exist without them, and our desire to make comfortable, one party and not the other, it's really allowing ourselves to sell ourselves short. And I feel like community members would also appreciate being a part of weighing in and seeing a letter from us that asks the police chief to grow.
Thank you.
I want to reiterate that the letter, as we are making this recommendation, will go to the COO and the mayor, who are the police chief's supervisors. Does not go directly to the chief. I'm sure a copy will be sent to him, and so all three can have that discussion. But the mayor and the COO are the recipients of the letter.
Okay, Justice, and then we need to vote.
So who's charged with writing the letters?
That will come after the vote if it passes.
Mr. Tran, can I make a motion for a different approach?
Floor. So let's get through that, and then if it doesn't pass, we will absolutely. But I have to take it per Robert's Rules of Order. Okay, so there is. I'm going to reiterate, and Commissioner Griffin Jones and Commissioners, correct me if I'm wrong. Not that you ever correct me, but especially Commissioner Benitez. Anyway, so the motion that I see, Commissioner Griffin Jones, tell me if this is correct, is a letter. I recommend one letter because I think two letters, it just gets too much. One letter that expresses disappointment in the fact that there wasn't anyone from the police department at the hearing, and then sets expectations that we hope they join us for future. Does that capture your motion? And did you still want to second it, or does someone else want to second? Oh, Commissioner, I'm sorry, I thought Commissioner Flores, my apologies. All right, so now we need to vote. So the vote is to send a letter to the COO and mayor, as I stated. And as far as writing a letter, okay, Dr. Scarborough has offered to, if it passes, Dr. Scarborough has offered, okay, they're writing it together, we get that. The experts, and then if it passes, it will come back to this body at the next meeting. All right, so now we're voting on sending the letter. So all those in favor, raise your hands. Okay, we have, you guys, Commissioner Griffin Jones, Commissioner Rubio, Rodriguez, Harvey, Justice, Byer, Kilpert, Mama, Brown, Aguilar.
It's better.
I know I did. Oh, did I say Hilpert? My apologies. Take Hilpert out. I saw you didn't. Aguilar, Diaz, Benitez, Hanson, Flores. Did I miss anyone? Okay. All those opposed, raise your hands. Okay, that would be Commissioners Hilbert, Case, Tran. All right, any abstentions? Commissioner Chatsky. All right, it passes. We will have our fearless leaders write it, and it will come back. We will re-agendize it for next month, next meeting, and then we will vote on the actual letter. All right, we good? All right, thank you, everyone. All right, so now we have the Commissioner's Conflict of Interest Policy. Now, this was another item tabled from last month as far as potentially recusing the entire commission. And you asked me questions, and I'm not a lawyer, so our fearless outside counsel, Mr. Bennett, will do the presentation. So we'll do the presentation and then have public comment. Thank you.
Good evening, Commissioners. I'm not sure if we have the public, oh, there we go. There's the PowerPoint. Okay, Commissioners, we have had this discussion several times before, but we have new commissioners. And so I just thought it would be a good idea to have a refresher on the whole issue with conflicts and commission recusal. Next slide, please. I think we might have slipped one. No, back, please. Okay, Commissioners, let me just say this as a preface. All of you were appointed because of your expertise and because of your experience and because of your involvement in the community. All right, many of you are associated with community organizations that interact with police or may complain about police or may have some involvement with police. That is an inherent part of your selection. The City Council selected you with full knowledge of that. Okay, so nothing that I'm saying today is meant to impugn anybody or try to force you off the commission or anything of the sort. The City Council knew who you were when you were appointed, including your involvement in the community, your background, etc. So that is a plus, okay? That is inherent. The thing that we have had to try to deal with is involvement of commissioners in certain complaints, in certain situations, in juxtaposition of your roles or with your roles as objective fact finders and neutral participants consistent or commensurate with due process. Next slide. A conflict of interest can exist on the commission if commissioners become involved in complaints that are filed against the police department. Why? Because those complaints come back to you to evaluate in connection with the police department. All right, so as I explained to people when they ask me, you can't burn both ends of the stick at the same time. There has to be a way to make sure that you maintain objectivity, fairness, and you act inconsistent or in comport with due process, but also have your personal lives. Nobody here can tell you what you can say and what you can't say in the community. Nobody can tell you who you can interact with or can't interact with in the community. That's your job. It's totally up to you. But when you sit in adjudication of the commission, you enter a different role. And if you are doing both at the same time, particularly related to a singular complaint, you have what we call divided loyalty. Next slide. All right. The CPP has to act in accordance with due process. You are, in effect, a legislative body. You are a form of a legislative body. The decisions that you make, although they may be recommendations to the police department, affect not only police officers' careers, you can affect practices and policies within the department. All right, that's why you're here. You're sanctioned and you are a part of the city's charter, which is essentially the city of San Diego's constitution. So you play a role in that. That means that the role that you play has to be played commensurate with due process. And what is due process? Due process is a concept in law that requires that a body such as yourself act with impartiality, objectivity, fairness, and that you act in equal or act with equal treatment towards the public, complainants, officers, and the department. Okay, so you have to be fair, neutral, and impartial. Next slide. You make findings and you evaluate in matters that can influence discipline, can influence findings, and can be the subject of legal actions. The CPP involvement, therefore, requires objectivity, impartiality, fairness, and avoidance of conflicts of interest. A conflict of interest will exist if extraneous factors influence or dictate a commissioner's actions, resulting in a biased decision. So, if commissioners are out involved in complaints that are coming before the commission, and the commissioner is adjudicating that complaint or commenting on the complaint, it's an obvious conflict of interest. It undermines your credibility, it sets you up for challenge, it sets you up for criticism, and it erodes your ability to be impartial, fair, and neutral. Next slide. What is the potential conflict of interest in government? Okay, and you'll find this if you just Google it. A conflict of interest exists if a legislator has any interest or engages in any business, transaction, professional activity, or incurs any obligation which is in substantial conflict with the discharge of his or her duties in the public service. Your duties are to be fair, impartial, objective when you're dealing with these police matters and these police cases. Next slide. What are the effects of conflicts in the public sector? Again, I Googled this just to see what people think, from a common sense standpoint. And here's what it said. If not managed appropriately and left unresolved, the conflict of interest can lead to problems undermining credibility and objectivity. In conflict situations, the private capacity interests of the public official or commissioner may improperly influence the decision-making process. That becomes the problem, and that's the problem we're trying to avoid. And I can say this, commissioners, look, lawyers, a lot of times we're here to tell you what you can and you can't do. People, I've been in this business for over 40 years. I've served as a city attorney. I've served as an assistant city attorney. I've served as a general counsel, port commissioners. I've served as outside counsel to CLRB. And I'm telling you the same thing I've told them since 1992, all right, in terms of conflicts. Next slide. NACO, the NACO Code of Ethics is overlaid into the municipal code. So the commission has to abide, or it is incorporated into the charter that you follow the NACO Code of Ethics. And what does that Code of Ethics say? And this is, again, under the San Diego Municipal Code, that commissioners must act with personal integrity, have independent oversight, and it includes integrity, objective fairness, impartiality, that you be transparent, that you be confidential, that you be respectful and unbiased, that you have or act consistent with professional excellence, and that your primary commitment is to the community over personal interest. All right. So, and Aaron, in what you do are the NACO Code of Ethics. We're bound by them. We follow them. They're in the code, and these are just bullet points as to what those ethics say. Next slide. When we determine, and I'm telling you what I've again told city councils and told commissioners and tell CLRB and any board of port commissioners, etc. When we analyze conflicts of interest, really the first line of defense or the first line of questioning or answers for people or legislators who have conflicts of interest is they go to the attorney. So if you're in the city council, you go to the city attorney. If you're in Oceanside City Council, you go to the city attorney. All right. You go to the city attorney first. If you're on the board of port commissioners, you go to the general counsel. That's me. And what we do in terms of trying to analyze conflicts of interest is we look at three lines of potential conflict. First, Government Code Section 1090. This is the most extreme conflict of interest. You all will not be involved in that. But Government Code Section 1090 can end up in a felony conviction. And that's where a public official has an interest in a contract and brings that contract to the public body and they accept it or they vote upon it unwaringly. Where that happens, that contract is void or voidable. Okay, there is no recusal. You just can't do it under Government Code Section 1090. And the commissioner or the person who is involved can be charged with a felony and can go to jail. All right, that's the most extreme conflict of interest. You don't have that concern, okay, because you're not voting on contracts. The second form of conflict of interest, you do have the concern because you all file Form 700. And the reason you have to file Form 700 is because the city and the state is interested in whether or not your decisions are being influenced economically. Whether somebody's paying, where's your money coming from? Who do you report to? Where's your interest? Who's giving you money? They want to know who's giving you gifts. And if you are being given gifts to make certain decisions, if that is the case, you have a conflict of interest. And that's why all of us, including myself, file Form 700. That's under the Political Reform Act. Now, the city attorney, myself, right now as outside counsel, in the future, your general counsel, can give you information in terms of economic conflicts of interest, but we can't immunize that action. Sometimes we have to write to the FPPC to get immunity for you or to get them to give an opinion as to whether or not you have a conflict of interest from an economic standpoint. I don't see that as necessarily a big problem for you, but the city does, and that's why they force you to file Form 700. The third form of conflict of interest is a common law conflict of interest. And that is the catch-all. That's the one that says, are you doing anything that impugns integrity or has the appearance of impropriety? So even the appearance of impropriety should be avoided. If there is the appearance of impropriety, you have a conflict of interest, and you need to avoid that at all costs. Which leads us to the next slide. You have adopted remedial measures to try to balance your involvement or involvement of commissioners who are in the community and who may have knowledge of complaints or may assist with complaints. You have adopted a policy that requires the commissioner, if they have a certain level of involvement or interest in these complaints, to, number one, disclose a potential conflict and recuse themselves from the dais. Okay, what recusal means is that the commissioner who has knowledge or is involved in a complaint not only declares it and says, hey, I have knowledge in this complaint, they get out of the matter. They leave the dais, they leave the room, they declare it, and they recuse themselves from any involvement. That is a way to help you still stay on the commission, be involved in the community, and still do your job, okay? And in most cases, commissioners, look, in 99% of the cases, that's all that's going to be required. The vast majority of the conflicts that you will have will be because you know something or you're involved in a complaint or something like that. Typically speaking, you'll be able to declare the conflict and say, hey, look, I'm out of that. I know something about it. I know the person, et cetera, and you'll recuse yourself. That means you, as the individual commissioner, won't participate in the decision or any involvement in that matter. That will avoid the conflict of interest. Okay, that's the lawyer trying to problem solve and trying to keep you in the game while you don't incur any potential exposure for conflicts of interest, all right? But, next slide. But we recently had a case that made me really, really ponder this. Now, commissioners, look, my job while I'm here is to give you the best legal advice I can. I can't make you follow it. If you reject it, no problem, no skin off my nose. I'm just in full disclosure going to tell you what I think. I don't have any law for what I'm going to tell you. All right, I can't point you to a statute that says this statute says you can't do this, you can't do this. However, I submit to you that there are some cases, or there are going to be some rare incidents, where a commissioner is so involved in a potential matter that comes before you, or in a complaint, or may in essence be the de facto complainant, where I submit to you that it's in your best interest as a commission, consistent with everything I said, and to avoid challenge for the entire commission to recuse, to say, you know what, nope, we have too many, our commissioner has too much involvement in that, we don't even want to see that complaint. Now that'll be a rare case, okay? That'll be a rare case, but that's the best way to protect yourself, because particularly commissioners, when you get investigatory authority, if you think you're being scrutinized now, wait until you get investigatory authority. Wait until you go out there and you start investigating and making individual findings. If it is determined that one of you, any of you, have been intricately involved, and I say intrinsically involved in that particular complaint that results in findings, particularly adverse findings in the department, you will rue the day that you didn't accept my advice in terms of dealing with this commission recusal. Again, and this is going back to what I submit to you in terms of being conservative. I'm a very conservative lawyer. Okay, so not conservative in my views, my social views, not that. No, not that. No, I'm not saying, look, I'm conservative in terms of don't get it twisted now. I'm conservative in terms of the advice that I give you, because I don't want anybody who listens to me or is associated with me getting in trouble. Okay, so I'm concerned. I'm not a risk taker as an attorney. I'm going to give you the best sound advice I have in my experience of over 40 years. So the way that this will work, and this is what I talked to the cabinet about, the way it will work will be this. When the disclosure forms come in, the attorney, really, because it's a legal determination, I can't tell you black and white and how many cases or what level of involvement is too much, but you can tell it. You can tell, and in the particular matter I'm thinking about, I could tell. If the level of involvement from the disclosure, or if we are notified by the police department about something, okay, then it becomes apparent that, hey, you know, we really, really need to scrutinize this and look at it, because there's no decision you make that's going to be sanitized. Nobody, and even commissioners, even if you could be perfect, and you know you're perfect, and you know Commissioner Tran, Chair Tran, has gotten involved, and she's gone to the police department, and she's told them what she thinks about a complaint, and she knows about the complainant, and she's there with the complainant if they're filing the complaint, et cetera, and then she says, oh, I recuse myself. I'm not going to be involved in it. Okay, that's fine. You might think everything is good. She might think everything is good. Who out there in the police department, assuming you come back with an adverse finding, is going to think there's not a problem with that? On the one hand, it's going to put you in a problem, because you're going to say, well, wait a minute, I like Chair Tran. I don't want to tell her complaint is garbage. This is trash. Get this out of here. Are you going to do that? And even if you did, who would believe you do that? So I just think it's a no-win scenario, and I think that and it's my recommendation, that if you're going to do this, that you allow the attorney, whoever that attorney is, it doesn't have to be me, general counsel, when you get your general counsel, but that you allow these disclosure issues to be run by the general counsel or outside counsel in connection with the complaint, and allow them to make a determination when the involvement is so extrinsically intertwined that the commission just needs to pass on the case. It'll be rare that it happens, but it will happen at some point. Okay, that's my presentation. I answer any questions.
Well, 1 second, please. We have to take public comment, and then we will take questions. So my apologies to commissioners. So is there public comment?
We have Ms. Francine. You have 1 minute.
Thank you. When the cabinet met with the chief of police without our interim executive director, which was unheard of, that was divided loyalties. That was undermining. So where was the report? There was no agenda. Our former executive director didn't know that the cabinet was meeting with the chief of police. So the appearance of impropriety was all over the community, because the police department saw that. They never saw the executive director come to a CPP meeting without the cabinet. So the cabinet made a decision. So I want to be careful to make sure that the entire people don't recuse themselves. One person stopping to film an interaction in the community with police and assisting a community member to write a complaint doesn't make it a big shining elephant. So to make everybody recuse themselves, that's the police controlling the CPP. Because the CPP made a phone call and said, so-and-so was filming me on 47th and Euclid. Now everybody needs to recuse themselves. Please be careful and dig deeper. And yes, everybody has attorneys. I have an attorney at the Earl B. Gilliam Bar Association.
Thank you. This concludes in-person public comment. If you're joining us virtually and would like to speak on this item, please raise your hand now. Mr. Miller, you have 1 minute. You can mute yourself. Thank you.
Yes, Yusef Miller, Saving Lives in Custody campaign. And I see
We can't hear
here.
you. 1 moment.
You can speak now, Mr. Miller.
Can you hear me? You can hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Yusef Miller, North County Equity and Justice Coalition, Saving Lives in Custody. Yeah, I can see if it's extensive interaction, but as far as helping to fill out complaints.
Please repeat. We can't hear you. 1 more time.
You can't hear me? Okay, let me see if I turn my volume up.
Go ahead and speak again.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, as far as extensive involvement, I understand, but when it comes to assisting complainants fill out a form, which can be nerve-wracking to some people, and they need help from a and who better to go to than a commissioner? So to go to a commissioner and ask how to fill this form out should not meet the criteria of extensively involved. And if they are at the scene where something is going on, I don't think that happens to be extensively involved as well. But if they need to fill out the proper forms and get them into the proper channels, I think we should please be aware that we're not removing commissioners' input just because they supported the documentation part and the administration part of this complaint. So that's what I wanted to add. Thank you.
Thank you. This concludes public comment for this item.
Okay, we have commissioner comments. I ask you to keep it kind of short because we still have case review. Commissioner Flores.
I feel like this topic is a symptom of a greater issue, and that's the accessibility of the website and the process for filing a complaint. When I look on the website, there are 2 languages forms. There are over 100 languages spoken in San Diego alone. When I look at the word count even, 1,500 characters is 250 words. The website is actually not even accessible. VoiceOver isn't a thing that you can access on it. There is no connection to someone that can support you in filing this. So there is no support with that process. The only lifeline is a commissioner, it looks like. And please correct me if I'm wrong, but that seems like the root cause of why commissioners would help someone.
Actually, we do have staff helping. It's a different story when staff helps than the commissioners. So there is our staff helping. They go out to community functions and help them fill out forms. So yes, and we can look at the website. Not to take away from what you said. Absolutely, that can be looked at. In fact, I see Dr. Scarborough writing down right now. But when staff helps, that's not what Mr. Bennett is referring to. But I see your point. Okay, Commissioner Griffin Jones. And I will start taking notes, so I'll point to you, but go ahead.
I want to +1 what Commissioner Flores said, and also hoping that we'll follow up Commissioner Flores's comment with action, like the staff that we do have for people to fill out forms. The reason people do come to commissioners because the nature of the harm that people survive by police can be so humiliating, can be so dehumanizing that you don't want to repeat it to a stranger. So that's one thing. The other thing is, and I appreciated what you said outside Council Bennett about this not being a policy to attack anybody. So I get increasingly worried that the very thing that made me attractive as a commissioner will be the very thing that leads to me no longer being in this space or making that door even narrower for other individuals. And then last thing, I think we do have to be very careful in the ways in which we're being impartial and how inactivity, being inactive under patriarchy, under policing, under racism, inaction is in fact us working in favor of folks who benefit from those systems. So those are my reflections.
Thank you, Commissioner Byer.
The difficulty I have is that everything is so vague. We've had instances at least twice where commissioners have recused themselves and left, and we still voted as commission. So what extraordinary circumstances has occurred? What do we need to know about what happened so we can avoid that, or why would it be take such an extreme measure to recuse the whole commission? And whose work we recused?
Yeah, Commissioner. Well, first of all, look, back to what Commissioner Griffin Jones said, that the people, those of you who are out there on the ground, those of you who are out there in the community, the commission needs your voices more than there. And this is what I've told individual commissioners. And I can't tell you what the situation is. You'd have to talk to individual commissioners because I don't want to get into that. But the commission needs your voices more than anything because you know what's happening. If I'm sitting in the ivory tower and I'm trying to adjudicate, look, I'm from South Central LA. All right, I have no business going over to Beverly Hills and telling them what's going on with their police department. Now, you can come into the hood, I can tell you what's happening with us, okay? Because I've been there. So they need my voice there. And what I've explained to commissioners who I've talked to is, look, we need your voice. The commission needs your voice. Nobody's trying to run you out. We're just trying to figure a way how to balance it. Commissioner Byer, in terms of your question, I can't tell you what the threshold is in terms of when there is excessive involvement. I can tell you that when we start hearing from the police department, or when we get in, when we talk to commissioners and they explain exactly what they did, it's not sitting down with somebody going through a complaint. It may be more than that. It may become, just like I said, when the commissioner becomes, quote unquote, the de facto complainant. And some of you will have complaints. When you become the de facto complainant, bringing that complaint back before the commission and having that commissioner recuse himself, I just don't think is enough. Now, you all can all reject it. You can just tell me to blow it out my ear. It's okay, because it's not going to be me that's going to be trying to address this. But I'm telling you, it's a legal determination. It's very, very factual. And you look at the totality of the involvement, et cetera. And you also look at whether or not the commissioner has identified themselves as a commissioner. So, I mean, then you become more than a commissioner. So then it becomes more, it can come back to us as a power play, okay? And that becomes difficult. And that just puts you all in harm's way as a commissioner. But you know what? If you want to stay there, hey, no problem, no problem.
Okay, we are running out of time, but we want to get everyone in. So Commissioner Hilpert, Case, then Melman.
I think hopefully everyone here believes this is a outlier, and it's probably going to happen rarely, if ever. But I think one of the things that makes me really concerned is if there's ever the opportunity where this does happen, I'm fearful that the police could over-exaggerate a circumstance in order to try to prevent us from reviewing a case. And that to me is a little bit of concern. The other thing I was going to say is I think before we vote on something like this, I think we need to have some kind of a mechanism in place for if we don't review it, who does? Because I would be more inclined to vote against this if basically that complaint just never gets seen by a citizen group. That to me is concerning. I think if we find a way to give it to, I don't know, the Ethics Commission or some other group to be able to oversee that, or maybe we have a partnership with CLERB or something like that. I would hate for us to basically go, oh, too many people on the commission reviewed this or touched it in some way. Now it just goes away and no one ever sees it. That's my only concern here.
I want to clarify as far as if PD does come to us, we don't take what they say. I mean, we do investigation and we can't reveal because we want to protect the confidentiality. But if it's brought to the cabinet, we do our own investigation, just to be clear. Okay, Commissioner Case and Melman.
Mine is a question, and that is, who would make the decision? Obviously, the legal counsel would give us their advice. Would the legal counsel make the decision? Would it be made by the chair? Would it be made by the cabinet, by the executive director, or by a vote of the commission? Who would have the ultimate authority as to whether or not to recuse?
Can I answer that question? It would be the council cabinet. And so because if the commission is making the choice, the commission is reviewing the case and making a decision on it. That's what you're trying to avoid. And commissioners, just like I said, I know this is difficult. Okay, I know this is a difficult determination. It goes on in city council chambers all the time. Okay, so it's one of those things.
Commissioner Melman, and then we need to move forward.
I just think that we need to have training for everybody on this issue so nobody crosses that line. Right? Like, and I know you said you can't make a definitive thing, but there has to be some rules and guidelines that we can live by, or we can develop them in some kind of way so commissioners feel comfortable supporting their community and at the same time don't put us into some kind of legal trouble. We have the code of ethics and the recusal form. This is a step. Okay, I'm turning it over to First Vice Chair.
Okay, at this point, I want to make a motion that we vote on this question and the motion is that we vote on the recusal of the commission. Listen to it. Potential recusal of commission depending on the extent of involvement of commissioners in cases filed with the San Diego Police Department. Okay, I'm making a motion. I'm asking for a second to that motion. Okay, okay. The vote is on potential recusal of commission depending on the extent of involvement of commissioners in cases filed with the San Diego Police Department. Is there a second to that motion? Okay, Commissioner Justice, second. Okay, discussion. Okay.
All right, we need to be quick. We're really running out of time. I see Commissioner Harvey, Griffin Jones, and Case, but it needs to be like 30 seconds.
Yeah, no, mine. Mine is just a repeat of the question I already asked is, who will be making that decision?
You should put that in the motion.
Yeah, exactly.
As Mr. Bennett said, it would be the council advising the cabinet. So do you want to add that to
Sorry, can we-
hang on a second.
Sorry, it's not catching on the.
I'm
I will add that to the motion.
We just want to quickly go back, then would they be bringing that back to the commission, and then would the commissioners be voting on that?
They would tell the commission, but they will not be voting. Okay, we have Griffin Jones and Griffin Jones, Case, and Flores. 30 seconds, guys, please.
I just want to voice my concern for future commissioners, and then also with the public comments that we've got from today, being worried about that decision is also ignoring some of what the public comment lifted up. And then +1 to Commissioner Hilbert around, like, if not us, then who will hear the complaint? That's a concern.
Thank you, Commissioner. Okay, Mr. Bennett, then Commissioner Case.
So commissioners, look, under your ordinance, you can refer the matter to the grand jury, you can refer it to the DA, you can refer it to some other body that will investigate it. CLRB will not investigate your matters, because CLRB will summarily dismiss any SDPD matters because they don't have jurisdiction, and they'll say that. They do that all the time. So they won't do it. You can refer it to some other body. It can be referred to some other body, perhaps the DA or the grand jury if necessary.
Commissioner Case.
Wording of the motion, because the wording of the motion is very vague. It says vote on potential recusal depending upon the extent of the involvement, and I would prefer to have the wording that was recommended by our legal counsel of extensively involved, such that they become a complainant. That's very specific as opposed to just general potential involvement.
I think the topic around recusing ourselves from this potential discussion on something that's
okay, but here someone else can. Why can't that be something we start first before we even create this situation of voting on something that is hypothetical?
Commissioner, great. And look, you commissioners, and I said this since the commission was stated, education is your thing. You can educate all day long. You can refer people, you can educate, you can educate, you can educate. The problem and the challenge becomes when the commissioners are involved in the actual complaint, that becomes the challenge. Now, and just like I said, involvement in a complaint, simple involvement, recusal is it. I'm talking about the one. There has been something that has gone on, or where information has come in and we reviewed the issue. We always, or if I get the information, I will go to the commissioners. I will go to the council, discuss it and flesh it out to see what happens. This is really your commissioners. This is a legal determination. Okay, so you either trust the lawyer who's here. It doesn't have to be me. It could be your general counsel, or you don't to make that call. I think it's one of those things. And I wish I could make it more specific and say, okay, once the commissioner crosses this line, this is where the recommendation should be made. I can't. Okay.
All right, we really need to move forward. So I think the only thing that was asked to change of Dr. Brown's is to say that it's on the council recommendation to the cabinet. Are you okay with being specific like that? Is there any problem? Can we have a consensus on that motion or on that word?
I will accept that as added to the motion.
Anybody else have a problem with that? Okay, so on consensus, so we're voting on this. So all those in favor of recusing the commission on the rare occasions that there's been involvement of commissioners, vote yes. If you want to vote yes, you're voting now. So if you want the commission to be able to be recused. No, we did add that. Oh, I thought you wanted to add outside counsel. Yeah. Did you want it? Because who's doing it? You just said yes. Okay, so all those in favor of it, raise your hand.
Yeah. Please, yeah, thank you.
Go ahead.
Okay, the vote of the potential recusal of commission depending on the extent of the involvement of commissioners in cases filed with the San Diego Police Department with the advice of outside counsel recommended to the commission. Cabinet, sorry.
All those in favor of that, please raise your hand. All right, we have Commissioner Justice, Hilbert, Case, and Tran. All right, all those opposed, please raise your hand. All right, we have Commissioner Benitez, Flores, Chatsky, Griffin Jones, Harvey, Fire. All right, all those abstaining. Aguilar, Diaz, Rubio, Rodriguez. Did I miss someone? Oh, Hanson, Malmut, Brown, abstain.
Those are abstaining. And then, I'm sorry, what was yours?
Mine?
Yeah.
I voted in favor.
In favor?
Okay, that has not passed. What was the final number?
I'm still missing two, so I'm trying to figure that out. Sorry. I had 4 as yays.
Yeah.
5 as nays, and I had 6 abstentions, but I'm still missing 2, so I missed 2 people.
All right, abstaining. If you're abstaining, please raise your hand again. Okay, Aguilar, Diaz, Hanson, Rubio, Rodriguez, Malmut, and Brown. Is that 7?
Yeah, so that's 4 yays, 6 nays, 7 abstentions.
The motion does not pass. Okay. All right. So now we are actually, well, we have time. All right. So we're going to move quickly to the ad hoc committee reports. This one is on the operating procedures. So just a quick update on what's going on, and we will have much more on this at the next meeting. Who wants to give it? Co-chair Rubio or co-chair Case? Okay, Case, go ahead. Did you want to give it? Okay. No, we're gonna.
Did you get the motion?
The motion, and I if we can just combine our numbers, we can get 4,
4, 6, 7.
Meeting met last week, and I'm looking at complaint policy, and we'll continue working on our complaint policy at our next meeting. I wanted to get some feedback tonight on our case review of operating procedure. Right now, we're operating under an interim operating procedure, which has been approved by the city council, but we need to develop a permanent one. That permanent one would have us no longer review officer-involved shootings, because we will be investigating officer-involved shootings. But it will give us the ability to review and evaluate internal investigations. Internal investigations are investigations that the department does that do not arise from a civilian complaint. So if somebody in the department raises an issue and they investigate an officer. We don't see that now under the Measure B. We will see it, but only after we have incorporated into our operating procedures. So that'll be added. We also plan to add, so it's in writing, that the department will not close cases until the commission has had the opportunity to review them, as long as it's done within the 1 year timeline. And then we've had some discussion of staff assistance, and we're going to put that very vague so that we can put in there that staff can facilitate the review of cases, but all decisions must be made by commissioners, and we'll keep the team or group concept. And one issue, I guess two issues, if you have any issues or concerns with the way we're reviewing cases, this would be a good time for us to give feedback. And then secondly, I'm going to recommend that we remove the distinction between category 1 and category 2, and that we review all cases the same way. We will not put into the report what the template will look like. And so it'll be up to the commission as it goes along as to what those reports will look like. But my recommendation, and I would like feedback on this, is to eliminate the distinction between category 1 and category 2, and to have the commission evaluate all cases and have the commission vote on all cases. And it'll be up to the commission to decide to what degree and depth they want to go on the review case.
Okay, before we have one in-person public comment on this item. Ms. Francine, you have 1 minute.
Thank you so much for the presentation. Totally support removing the distinction and making sure that everybody sees everything and that it gets a fair shot. That will be awesome to help us continue to build our relationship with the community and get the community sparked again and engaged in reference to complaints. Remember, accountability is not the enemy. And I think that we have people that are using a personal relationship and not having a line of demarcation. Business is business and personal is personal. And I'm seeing a lot of vagueness and there's some blurry lines going on.
All right, thank you. Check if we have any virtual public comment. If you're joining us virtually and would like to speak on this item, please raise your hand now. This concludes public comment on this item. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Obi. All right, so as far as discussion, we are running really tight on time. Since we're going to have a much more in-depth discussion on all the operating procedures next time, may I recommend that if you have any suggestions, email them to Commissioner Case and Commissioner Rubio, and that way they can incorporate them into those operating procedures. It sounds like that there's backing on getting rid of the distinction between category 1 and category 2. Is there anything else you want to add?
That was the main thing I wanted feedback on. If you do have any other suggestions, contact me or any other member of the committee so we can consider those.
Thank you for agreeing to that. All right, so now we're going to do up. So Sophie is in charge of this, so everyone looks fantastic. Ms. Obi, let's go. To lead us into closed session, Mr. Bennett.
Okay, thank you, Chair. There will be a recommendation.
We have public comment.
We have no in-person public comment. We have no in-person public comment on the closed session. If you're joining us virtually and would like to speak on closed session, please raise your hand now. This concludes public comment on this item. Thank you.
My apologies, Mr. Bennett. Please continue.
That's okay. That's okay. The recommended closed session is Government Code Section 54.957 to discuss complaints that are protected and confidential in the Penal Code Sections 832.5 or 832.8 and Evidence Code Section 1040. That would be the recommended closed session.
Thank you. We are going into closed session. We please close the doors, turn off our Zoom. We should return approximately 7:20, approximately. Thank you.
We're back in open session at 7:17, and I turn it over to outside counsel, Mr. Bennett.
Okay, thank you, Chair. The board met in closed session under pursuant to Government Code Section 54.957 to discuss cases
Being confidential under penal code sections 832.5 through 832.8, the evidence code section 1040, the board discussed the cases. There is no reportable action. That will conclude my report.
Thank you. Do we have any quick commissioner comments? Mr. Chatsky, would you like to introduce yourself in a couple minutes? Just share with the commissioners and the public a little bit. So welcome to you.
It's a pleasure to be here. I'm Steve Chadsky. I am a retired attorney. I had an extensive practice in criminal defense up north in Northern California. And I've lived in San Diego for a long time now. And I was previously involved with the Santa Clara County Asian Law Alliance. I was chair of the board quite a while ago, and looking forward to my time here to see what I can kind of move back into.
Thank you for being here. Did any other commissioner have anything to add really quickly? Mr. Justice, Commissioner Justice.
I was wondering if we could get a breakdown of complaints by each division, each police division. Can we do that?
Yeah, Ms. Scola will work on that. Thank you. Okay, I'm not sure by when, but because she's also working on job descriptions for investigators, so we can get going hiring on that. So there's a lot on her plate, but she will work on that. She's pretty efficient. Anything else? All right, it's 7:19. This ends our commission meeting. Thank you for joining us, and we will now close our meeting. Thank you.